Hey everyone, this is Jack from the Cardboard Herald, and today we are taking a look at Raiders of Scythia. Scythia? Scythia. Raiders of Scythia, which, for those of you who don't know, is actually a repackaging, a reskin, and reconsolidation in some ways of Raiders of the North Sea and its subsequent expansions fit with this historical Scythian theme. Now, what is this game? This is a worker placement in which you are a tribal leader and you are raiding neighboring civilizations in order to have the most glory by the end of the game in terms of accumulated goods or through having points that have been accrued in the act of raiding itself. There are a few other things in which you can gain points from, either through the accrual of very pretty horses, having different eagles, pets are blingin'. And then there's also these quest things that you can contribute certain resources to in order to claim them off the board. But the main focus of the game is building out a crew in order to have enough power and the supplies to go on these subsequent journeys to raid further and further away from Scythia in order to have the most points. The main thing that you're doing on your turn, and the little innovative twist, which is quite cool about this game, is that on your turn you take your one worker that you have, you place it on a spot on the board, you perform that action, and then you pick one worker up. It's like you're stocking a warehouse shelf, you're doing one in, one out, one in, one out. So your turn is always going to be two different actions and dependent not only on what spaces are available for you to do that initial placement, but also what spaces already have a worker on that you're going to remove a dude from in order to perform that action. Now, if you're doing something to prepare for your raiding goodness, you're doing it up at the village and your one in, one out can only be there. If you're going on one of the raids, you put your dude down who has to be one of the matching colors in order to conduct that raid. More on that in a bit. But once you perform that raid, you are going to permanently leave that worker there, potentially upgrading them to one of the more advanced colors that is going to then be circulated in the village and go on subsequent raids. Once almost all the raids are done, then it gets to a final turn and the game ends. Most points is the winner. That is your game. So what makes this game cool? Why is it noteworthy? Well, the first thing is that I really love the sense of development that you have in this game, and not just personal development, which is cool. As you play, you're going to have your leader who has an ability that's going to activate whenever you're taking the town center action, but also you're going to be able to get these followers who contribute different abilities, or as I said, you could outfit them with eagles who allow you to trigger extra abilities, duplicate abilities. You can do all kinds of stuff. There's a lot of neat synergistic Euro efficiency combinations that can happen with your own kit as you go forth onto these raids, and that feels cool. But there's also a more abstract development that happens as you play the game. It's the development of a civilization. As I said earlier, when you commit a worker to a raid, which initially everyone has access to only blue workers, then you are going to permanently leave that dude there at that raid spot. When you raid, by default, you are going to win it so long as you can pay the supplies in order to go there. You have the minimum requirement of crew on hand in order to visit that, but depending on the power or strength that you have, you're going to either get glory points or you're going to get wounds, which potentially end up killing your crew that you've outfitted your elite band of raiders with. But like I said, no matter what, you're going to end up getting the goods from that raid and the worker, because everything is one in, one out, one in, one out. And that new worker is part of that new pool. It's an upgrade. It's almost a representation of the experience of your civilization, that you have more veterans who have been to further off lands. Likewise, in order to get to the really far off places like Greece, you need to have these wagons, which are only available, well, predominantly available through gaining them as part of the initial raids in closer kingdoms. So there's this tier as you get further away from the home part of the board, the very top of the board, which is not only like a representational distance, but also is sort of a story of your culture having further and further reach. It makes for such a cool storied progression for what is otherwise quite an abstract game. Now, as you can tell, another one of my favorite things about this game is the tempo, that one in, one out that I keep on talking about. It gives you a sense of immediacy as you take your turn, and there's a lot of possibilities that you can take, but only having responsibility for one worker, having no rounds to speak of. You just take your turn, place a dude, take a dude, and then you're done, and you just keep on going until the game reaches its conclusion. Gives it a really compelling forward thrust, almost like a dance as you're taking your turns, which is really unlike most games that I've played. And then another thing that I really like quite a bit about it is that it feels very tight. It is Spartan. It's not to say that you don't have versatility in what you do, but every aspect of this game, from the rad horses to the eagles to every single person that you're putting into your crew, is all in service of this forward thrust to get to do as many raids and quests as possible. It has this sort of old school Euro sense of precision that I find really reinvigorating in a lot of ways. And I should also mention that this game has a pretty awesome solo mode. It's not particularly robust as far as like a dynamic opponent, but the overhead is really low and it makes for a really good puzzle, and it doesn't take away from any of the best feelings of playing the game as you would in multiplayer. But as always, we have to talk about what didn't work in this game. And look, I kind of love how this game looks. I love the visual aesthetic, and the artwork for the characters ranges from pretty good to downright astounding in how evocative and interesting and stylistic they are. But boy, is it hard to sometimes tell what is going on the board. From initial setup, you have all kinds of plunder tokens on the board. You have all the meeples set out for you to take upon your raids. And then you have tiny text which can kind of blend in with the background about what are the conditions in order to go to the raid, or the symbology, not text. But you also have some sort of confusing concepts within the symbology itself. Not only do you have to have a certain number of characters in your possession, but then you also have to pay some resources. At a distance, the board looks kind of awesome and has a great table presence, but as far as functionality, it is busy and is sometimes hard to overlook pertinent details as you're playing, just because it doesn't jump out in your face and have this sort of readability that I look for in a lot of games. Also, this is something that everyone going into this game really should know. The double-edged sword of it being that kind of tight, old-school Euro game that I was describing as a positive can be a drawback for a lot of people, because there's not a lot of variability in your approach. You are going to be doing the same thing pretty much every game that you're playing. Yes, there is some variety in how you do it. The different leaders provide a lot of variety. The different characters certainly do. And you may be more invested in raids versus getting points from completing quests in one game to another. But for the most part, you only have two real viable avenues in order to get points in this game, and you are going to try to more efficiently do that with the tools at your disposal every single game. So if the compelling nature of the strategy isn't enough to give you a satisfying amount of replayability, then it's going to feel somewhat shallow to you. For a lot of people, that sense of narrow structure but a lot of strategy and tension within is exactly what they're looking for, which is kind of what old school Euro games were all about. This is more a preference thing that you would have to be aware of. So Overall thoughts? I really like the game. It's smart, it feels compelling, it has an interesting worker placement system that is unlike a majority of the worker placement games that are out there on the market. It has a cool visual identity, and it has this polished old school Euro feel in this really adorable, tight little condensed box. I mean, just look at that thing. That thing is so cute and is so action-packed within. And yes, for the most part, it is a reskin of an already existing game on the market, but like I said earlier, it's a consolidation of that game and the best aspects of the subsequent expansions, almost to feel more like a tightly focused second edition with a cooler theme. And I am all about that. So I'm a big fan of Raiders of Scythia. Scythia? I don't know. We'll figure it out one day. Raiders of Scythia. And that's our review. Thank you so much for watching. I've been Jack for the Cardboard Herald. If you enjoyed this video, we have all kinds of other reviews, interviews, and recommendations via writing, podcast, and video here on our channel and website cardboardherald.com. Our content is audience supported, so if you want to show your support, please visit our Patreon. Thank you so much for watching. This has been the Cardboard Herald.